Hey there, if you feel like you're stuck on the hamster wheel of finances and no matter what you do, you could never get ahead, you're living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, you're stressed out about money, in this video I'm going to show you a proven 4-step formula to get out of the rat race, to stop stressing about money, to start having the peace of mind and having your money work for you. Hey there, my name is Jason Wojo. I run a company called Life in Air, and at Life in Air, our whole purpose is to help business owners create businesses that are thriving, that are profitable, but also serve and support the life they want to live. It's all about life first, business second, but making sure there's not a compromise in either of those so you can have both an incredible life and an incredible business. And so in this video, I'm going to break down a 4-step process. We call it the 4 stages of financial prosperity. We've been teaching this in Life in Air for over a decade now, have had thousands of people have tremendous transformations in their financial life as a result of it. And you're going to do the same thing once you incorporate this. Now, the premise of this is we're going to start off with our vision and we're going to work through creating assets to provide our income for us. And it's a stepwise process. And it's important here to recognize, I think a lot of people know that they want their money to work for them, but they really don't have any concrete ways to do that, except for maybe putting some money in the stock market, or they're going to have a high interest savings account, which is great, get your 3 or 4%. The first stage of the 4 stages of financial prosperity is creating your vision. Now, you may wonder, first of all, what is a vision and why is this important? And let's get into that. So your vision is a magical document that is a combination of your dreams, your aspirations, your identity, your priorities, the things you want to do, the things you want to have, the things you want to experience, the kind of person you want to be, all of these things in one thing. Think of it kind of like as your mission statement for life, right? And it identifies like kind of what you want your days to look like, how you want to be known, all of it. And the reason this is important is because some of the items in that vision have a financial cost. Let's say you say, hey, I want to go to Bali for, a month every year. And you calculate that to be $15,000. Well, guess what? You need to make $15,000 to live that. That will give you an objective measure as to how much money you need to make to live your vision fully. And once you kind of put together and summate all of those things, you'll know how much money you need to make. I'll tell you, in some cases, I see people make a whole lot more money than they need to live their vision, but they're not living their vision. And it's because many times they haven't deliberately taken the time to create the vision. This is the step that most people want to skip, and they want to go right to stage 3, stage 4. And yet I'll tell you, even if you are able to get to stage 3 or stage 4, it will most likely be temporary or unsustainable if you don't take the time to go through the stages in the order that I'm giving you. And so it's so important to stop here and to really double down on creating your vision, because this is the most important step of all of the stages. And I'll also say this, and this is not to discourage you, but it is the most difficult because so often we've all been conditioned by our surroundings, our upbringing, our environment, our friends, society, all these things in terms of like what we should want and what we think we're supposed to want, or what is rewarded like, on social media. And so it takes some real time to figure out what that is for you. And by the way, that's why it takes us a full 3 days to go through this at our Get a Life Getaway, because it takes some time to really unpack this for people and to kind of get rid of those influences and to figure out exactly what they want, what they find valuable, and what they want to prioritize in their lives. And so once you do that, now you have a financial objective metric on how much money you need to make, which does something very, very important. We'll get into this in a moment. And that is, it gives you a very real objective measure as to, are you spending your money right now in a way that's moving you towards that vision, or is it moving you further away? Some of the decisions that people make with money doesn't make them any more likely to achieve that vision. It doesn't bring them any closer to that vision. And sometimes you got to wonder well, and by the way, let me say this, without the vision, you don't know this. And that's why it's so important. But when you have that in front of you and you're spending this money over here and you're like, well, this isn't moving me towards my vision, it helps you make better choices with your money, and it helps you be more likely and more chances to achieve that vision than if you didn't have it. It's kind of like having that roadmap, right? Certainly, I know I've been in situations in the past before I had a vision where I'd make a ton of money, And then not too long later, I'd be broke. I'm like, where did all my money go? And it was because I didn't have any really discipline with my money, and I didn't know, what I wanted. And so I just kind of spent it. I don't want to say frivolously, but certainly without any kind of intention. And so your vision gives you intention, gives you intentionality with how you spend your money and what you do. And so it's really, really important to get that in place. And we'll cover some more reasons in a moment, but I want to pause here because this is, again, the most important of all the 4 stages. So creating your vision is the first stage of the 4 stages of financial prosperity. So let's move now to stage 2. Stage 2, and by the way, let's take some notes here. So stage 1 is creating your vision. All right, stage 2 is breaking even financially. Now, what is that? So now we are pivoting to finances. We're going to start talking about money. Stage 2, by the way, let me just say this. It's my least favorite of the stages, but it's also ironically where 99% of the population gets stuck. And that is living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, breaking even financially. Now, we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about this because it's so important to understand what gets us stuck here so we can move forward. So the first thing is it doesn't really matter what time frame you talk about breaking even. You can say you're breaking even monthly or quarterly or annually. It doesn't matter. What you are doing is trading. This is another important indicator of stage 2 is like stage 2 is trading time for money. This is you working for the dollar. This is not your assets working for you yet, okay? Very, very important distinction. And there's a lot of dangers associated with this as well. So number 1 is, let's say you're breaking even and you are the one providing the income. Well, what happens if you can't work? Or what happens if something happens to you? Or if you get sick? Or if you want to take a vacation, this is where you can't because you are providing the income for maybe yourself or your family, and you are unable to step away. And when you're already just treading water and something happens, it's not a good place to be in. And yet everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people get stuck here for a few reasons. 1 is because their income relies on them. And 2 is because they have a lot of debt. So let's address the first thing first, which is your money comes from you specifically. You are responsible for generating the income. And so not only do you have very limited hours that you can work, and even if you're working 12, 18-hour days, that is not sustainable. All right. And so there's a very real bottleneck in that approach. The second part of this is, and improving that is, you've got to learn how to run a business like a true owner, not an operator. And what this means is starting to dissect and tease apart all the things you can do that are the highest leverage activities, meaning you can make the most amount of money in the least amount of time, part of which involves getting rid of these things through elimination. We talk about this in our seed process. So we got elimination, having technology do things for you so you have less to drop balls and less things on your plate, and then using teams and people. That's the delegation part of the seed process. So learning to lead into and to lean into the seed process is one powerful way to move out of stage 2. The second thing I want to mention is how we talked about it a moment ago, debt and expenses. Now, here's the thing, and the reason why people get stuck here is because a lot of people will make more money and they'll get higher incomes and then they'll just spend more money. And so that difference, the delta between their living expenses and their income stays the same. And so this is where being stuck in stage 2 is not an indicator of how much money you make. I've seen people in stage 2 that make 30 grand a year, and I've seen people in stage 2 that make 300 plus a year. So it's independent of how much money you make. It's how you kind of balance your income and your expenses. So let's talk about that for a second. And so one of the things I encourage people to do is think about their expenses and their income as offense and defense. So your offense is your ability to make income, and your defense is kind of steward your expenses, how you manage your expenses. Now, I typically encourage people to look at their expenses first before the income. Now, I want to be careful here because I want you to recognize there's only so much you can cut, and I'm not asking you to live under a bridge down by the river and eat ramen noodles and mac and cheese for the rest of your life. But it's worth taking a pause to look at your expenses, because otherwise, if you don't have the discipline and the insight as to how you spend money, which again, don't forget that reference to your vision, right? Now you will just make more money and spend it. And so look at your defense first and then your offense. Now, ideally, of course, we're doing both of these. We're increasing our income while decreasing our expenses. That's the magic. But at least you have to do one of those, increase your income or decrease your expenses. And so again, I don't spend too much time looking at your expenses because there's only so much you can cut. That's a finite game, but income is an infinite game. And so I do want you to focus there. The other thing related to expenses that I want to share, and this is kind of an unpopular approach, is talking about debt. Now, I don't want to get into a good debt, bad debt discussion when it comes to investing into assets, right? And having a mortgage, for instance, on a rental property. We'll use this as an example. But I will say this, good debt feels good until it doesn't. It feels good while it's performing until it does no longer performing. And so I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you have a rental property and that tenant moves out and you have a mortgage payment of $2,000 that's due. And that doesn't feel so good, right? And so that good debt no longer feels so enjoyable. The other thing I'll say about debt is to understand and appreciate that debt it's not just a financial decision. It has to do with the way you feel emotionally about it. You know, I've seen people that can sleep like babies with millions of dollars of debt, and I've seen people that have $20,000, $10,000, $1,000 worth of debt, and they're stressed out about it. So you got to understand yourself with how you feel about debt. Now, that's investment debt. And again, I don't want to get too far down that road, but certainly for consumer debt, I can certainly say that most people would agree there's not a whole lot of value to that. If you can avoid consumer debt, credit card debt, things like that, then that is a move in the right direction. So, and by the way, please know none of this comes from a place of judgment. I was at a point in my life several years ago where I had almost $90,000 of credit card debt, which, by the way, it was working until it wasn't, because I was doing things like flipping houses on it and trying to be smart with it. But the whole thing fell down, and I would not recommend that. And so as much as you can avoid that stuff, and as much as you can reflect on your vision to see like whether these purchases are helping you or hurting you, that really helps you do that. Because I'll tell you, there was a lot of sleepless nights for me and robbing Peter to pay Paul to get out of that debt. And when I got out of that debt finally and had zero credit card debt, which took some time, I will never go back. And it's an incredibly liberating experience that I want everyone to really get to enjoy, because it's just such a different feeling. You have different ability to enjoy things and not have your bandwidth and your emotions hijacked by the stress associated with that debt. And so I just bring that up in a very brief method for you to kind of consider that debt is one of the reasons why people are getting stuck in stage 2 as well. They're just buying stuff that really they can't afford and getting stuck there. And you know, it's trying to, in some cases, impress people that we really shouldn't care about and that are not helping us. And we really need to be us and be comfortable with who we are and what we can accomplish and what we can afford without compromising the things that really we care about. So that's stage 2. So stage 2, we are breaking even. All right. So again, temporary, supposed to be a temporary stage. Most people get stuck there. Let's not get stuck there. Let's move to stage 3. So stage 3 is generating excess cash. Nice. Everybody likes doing that, right? So now we're generating excess cash. And what that looks like is if you do the things that I shared with you earlier, if you learn to implement the seed process, if you learn to find high leverage, high income activities, if you watch your expenses, if you're able to both decrease your expenses and increase your income, or if it's just one of them, these are the things that move you out of stage 2. It's about doing things right. It's about reflecting on your vision and making decisions that move you and guide you towards what's truly most important to you. I'm not asking you to sacrifice. I'm asking you to prioritize what's most important to you. Stage 3, we're generating excess cash, right? And so this is great. Now, I want to give you a couple cautions about this, because you could do anything with that money in stage 3. Certainly, I will tell you this. When I first got out of debt, I was by the way, I had a literal spreadsheet with all of my credit cards that I kept track of, and it was horrible and it was stressful. And when I finally paid that all off, I made some money and it's sitting in my bank account and I'm freaking out. And I'm like, what am I forgetting to pay? What is going on here? Something's not right. I'm scanning my spreadsheet. Nope, no debt, zero balance. And it feels weird. And there was something strange inside of me that was so used to being broke that I almost felt the urge to just spend that money. And I know that sounds insane, but that is what I experienced because I was so used to not having money. And so you gotta take a look at yourself and make sure you're honestly evaluating that sensation for you as you pay down the debt, as you get out of stage 2, as you start generating excess cash. Make sure you don't kind of like fall into old bad habits that hold you back. Now, you could take that money, you can do anything you want. Like I said, you could give it away, you could invest it, you can pay down debt, you could spend it, and listen, when I finally got out of debt, you're faced with these situations. My situation was that I had the opportunity to kind of invest into stage 4 assets. And that's one of the things that we'll get into in a moment. But I want you to also give yourself the freedom to enjoy some of your progress as well. And so I'm not saying that you always have to be, hey, it has to be stage 1, stage 2, stage. Like if that's not enjoyable for you, then don't do that. Give yourself a little bit of flexibility and freedom to reward yourself for your progress. Okay. So I'm not saying you have to devote every dollar towards stage 4, but give yourself some freedom. And in fact, when I was paying off my debt, every $10,000 that I paid off, I would have given myself $1,000 of a reward as an incentive. I'm like, okay, 10% feels like it's valid. Let me also say that many times that $1,000 just went to paying off more debt, but there were a couple cases, and there may or may not be a couple guitars in my house that were a result of that $1,000. And so give yourself the ability to kind of like just be mature about this, make some decisions prudently, and just have some discernment, and it'll serve you well. And so the other caution I'll give you about stage 3 is this is not the time to increase your lifestyle. Like I mentioned before, what happens many times is people will make more money, or they'll get a stash, they'll finally have their war chest of money, and they're like, hey, let's remodel the kitchen, right? Or let's do whatever, and let's hey, we've driven the Toyota and the Honda for long enough. Let's get the Lexus and the Infiniti, right? And so this is not the time to do that, because what happens is if you increase your monthly needs, now you go back to stage 2, right? And you're just breaking even again. And this is where what I'll see so often is people are looping. They're looping between stage 2 and stage 3 because their lifestyle keeps ratcheting up while they make more money, and they never get ahead. And this keeps them in the rat race. Again, the rat race is not dependent on how much money you make. It's a way of managing that difference, the delta between your income and your expenses, right? That's really, really important. So that's stage 3. So let's now move into stage 4. Stage 4 is investing in income producing assets, IPAs. Okay, so invest in income producing assets. This means now you have an asset that is generating cash flow for you that does not require you to do all the work. Okay, so we talked about the seed process. That's an application where that's a business. Now, by the way, this also could be applied to stage 4 as well if your business is an asset that does not require you. And the reason this is important is because this is, and let me also just dispel the myth right now, there is no such thing as passive income. Just forget about that. Unless you're putting it in a high yield savings account, even the stock market, even if you're looking at index funds, require a little bit of time. Certainly some more than others, but you got to just recognize some level of oversight and due diligence is required in all investments. Now, our encouragement to you is to invest in these income producing assets debt-free. If you just fell out of your chair, I want to say that again. Invest in these debt-free. Now, some of you are like, well, hold on a second. There's no way a rental property in my area costs $300,000. And I just want to use rental property as an example. I'm not saying this is the right vehicle for you, but I want to just encourage you to think of this in a couple different ways. Number one, if you have to take out a mortgage, or if you have to take out some debt, then my personal recommendation is to take out as little as possible. Now, some of the people right now who are talking, oh, your cash on cash return is going to be too low, or you're not leveraging. Again, it's a personal choice, but I'd encourage you to think it's not just a mathematical equation, right? It's not a financial equation solely. There are ways to invest that do not require debt. So for instance, one of the ways that's very popular within Life and Air is what we call debt-free investing, where a joint venture partnership on a particular property, I'm not talking about a global partnership, is undertaken where one person will come to the table with the money and the other person will provide the legwork, and they'll do the oversight and the management of a property. Again, just continuing with the example of the rental property, and they split that cash flow in some predetermined percentage. Okay, that's how that works. Now, certainly not every asset in every location makes sense financially. The returns could be worse than the stock market, but this is a way that does work with some cases to do this. And so let's kind of bring this down the ground level to see what this actually looks like in real life. And so I'm going to use an example. I have no idea what rental properties go for in your area, but we're going to kind of use this as an example. And so let's say you and your family need $4,000 per month to live. Now, that could be way less than you need, or it can be way more than you need. I have no idea. Let's say that your rental property, after, let's say you invest in it debt-free, it's going to kick off $1,000 per month after your split. Now, this is breaking even, right? The $4,000 is breaking even. Your $1,000 is your recurring income coming from your rental property. You take this $1,000 and you apply it to the $4,000. And one of two things happen. Either one, now you're making $5,000 per month, which now generates an excess, right? Remember excess stage 3 of $1,000 a month. Or now you, whatever job you have, you know, because this is, again, stage 2, you are breaking even with your blood, sweat, and tears. Now you can reduce that to $3,000. What this $1,000 did was just removed 25% of what you need to generate on your own. And so now you only need to make $3,000 through your job. And so what this does is allow you to have some more flexibility, have more freedom, perhaps work less, or to or to pick it, maybe even you to have a different job, right? Or do something different that you're more passionate about. And so you can see here very simply is that all it takes is 4 of these $4,000 per month incomes to completely cover the $4,000 a month that you need to make in stage 2. And so what happens is now when you have $4,000 a month coming in from your assets, you are work optional. This means you are financially free and you get to do the things you want to do. Now, I will tell you this. Many people believe that, hey, when I'm financially free, I'm just going to retire on a beach somewhere. I'm going to relax. I'm going to kick my toes up in the sand. And I'll tell you from experience, and I've dealt with a lot of people, that might last for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. If you're a soldier, maybe a couple of years. At some point, you will be bored. You will need purpose and meaning in your life. And this is just a normal part of it. So it's not about kind of just like retiring and then just flopping around and like sitting on the couch every day, because that's boring. It's about giving you flexibility. It's about giving you freedom. It's about removing the stress and the bandwidth associated with worrying about money and having a stable source of income coming in so that you are able to do the things regardless of whether or not you're working, right? Because my suspicion is at some point you do want to cut back on work, or you want to have some flexibility for the things you want to do, or these trips that you've identified in your vision take time. And so this is where it's really important to understand it's not an either or, but it's rather just an option to give you more flexibility and freedom in your life. And so I hope that makes sense. I hope you do something with this. And again, there's nothing specific or special about rental properties. Any kind of asset, anything that has value that doesn't require you to do all the work is a valid candidate for this. Again, there's so many different versions of this. And just in real estate alone, there's, dozens and dozens. And so it's the principle that I want you to embrace, and the strategy and the steps that when you follow in order, virtually, like I said, guarantee you will achieve financial prosperity. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you do something with it, and we'll see you in the next video.